Mixed Messages is a podcast by Bree Graham and Emily Madigan, two mixed women trying to navigate the complexities of living between multiple communities in these divided times. On today's episode of Mixed Messages, we're talking about veganism, how it's been appropriated by white culture, and how that affects the communities that started it.
For more information about today's episode, check out our website at mixedmessagespod.com. Follow us on all social media platforms and where you stream your podcasts. And don't forget to join our Patreon for more exclusive content.
Okay, let's get into it. Just eat it, eat it, eat it. It's been, I don't know why it's stuck in my head.
Well, we've been talking about food.
Hi, Em.
Hey, Bree.
How are you today? How was your birthday?
My birthday was good. It was good. It was very chill. I mean, I was sad that I couldn't get to physically be with everyone, but
yeah. Sorry. I really wanted to make that really organic, but it's just not going to happen. So you're making food more. We talked about that a little bit on last week's episode with you making more food, but I would love to know a little bit more about that. I mean, last week I asked you like what's going on there and you kind of were like, I don't know, I can't live my life like this.
I can't live my life like this. I can't.
Well, something that I don't think a lot of people know is that you've been kind of on and off vegetarianing. I don't know, how do we want to say that?
Yes, I'm I don't know, I'm vegetarian adjacent.
Okay. No, yeah, that's fine.
I try to eat a more plant-based diet than I have before, but there are certain things that I will never give up. But I also find that leaning more vegetarian is actually better for cooking, learning how to cook, because cooking a vegetable incorrectly most of the time isn't going to kill you, isn't going to make you sick. Mm-hmm. But if you cook meat incorrectly, that ish can have lasting effects for a couple days.
And that, I mean,
you know, I'm just like, I'm not about it.
That's why I'm always down to make the side dish, but please don't ask me to make the main course, because one, I won't try it to verify that it's legit, and two, if you get sick, that ain't got nothing to do with me, boo boo.
Listen, I'm good. That's don't blame your worship of the porcelain gods my problem or my fault.
Okay, I really did not care for what you just said, so let's just.
You don't like worshiping the porcelain gods?
Let's just get into this.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so to honor the fact that I'm starting to become an adult at 32 and am learning to cook for myself, and to honor the fact that Bree has been healthy pretty much her entire life, we thought we would talk about the mixed messages in veganism. You have been, for as long as I've known you, which is what I consider your entire life, you've been very healthy.
There it is. It's that right there.
It's really the fact that you, as long as I've known you, have always been like, I'm a vegetarian. Anyway.
I want to talk about this video that you sent me.
Oh,
well, actually, no, you posted it, and I
did.
I was just shook. I was shook.
I know, you were like, tell me more about this. Send this video to me. So a couple of weeks ago, I saw a video on Instagram, which is where I get a lot of interesting research topics, of a person explaining the whitewashing and the colonization of veganism.
I think we have the clip. I'll play it.
Veganism as we know it today didn't actually emerge as a concept until like 1944. It wasn't until this man, Donald Watson, coined the term when he wanted to separate vegetarians who ate animal products versus those who didn't, and founded the Vegan Society. What he failed to realize, though, that those practices already existed in POC cultures like African culture and Native American culture, and POC religions like Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. They slowly started erasing POC faces from the movement.
So the post was created using the shared screen option on TikTok by The Conscious Lee, who I suggest everyone follow, who is visibly reacting to the information being shared by I'm Big So What. Now, like I said before, I'm not a vegan. I'm barely a vegetarian. Like I said before, I am what I like to call vegetarian adjacent. But Bree, you are a vegetarian, correct?
Yes, I am.
Can you talk about that?
Am. Of course I can tell you about that. So I decided to become a vegetarian. I had to have been like a junior or a sophomore in high school, somewhere in that like age bracket. But to be completely honest with you, I never really ate a lot of meat anyway. Like I was never somebody that could do anything on the bone. So like ribs, like pork chop. I've already had so many people, so many Black people specifically, yell at me because I cannot stand fried chicken. Like chicken wings, like mm-mm, mm-mm. I can't. It's no. So then I just made the choice, when I was in high school, to do it 100% because I just figured it would be like, I'm already leaning so close to this that I might as well just commit.
Right.
That's back before I had deep commitment issues. So yeah, that's why
which is so funny because you're one of the most committed people I know.
I don't even know what you mean by that.
You commit to the bit, you commit to whatever you set your mind on. You're very, very highly self-motivated, which I don't understand. And I really, really wish I could siphon that off of you because I need that in my life.
What? Okay. I don't. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's
take the compliment, Brie.
Take the note. Take the note.
Take the note.
Yeah. So then I will say that I have been kind of on and off when David and I first started dating. I jumped off of the vegetarian thing, my vegetarian lifestyle, because we were going on dates and it was just like fun. And then when it came to like being around family, like I didn't want to be that person that was like, hey, I am a person of color. Hey, I'm an actor. And hey, I'm also a vegetarian. So if you guys could just fix your meals around me. In hindsight, 100% just like stick to your guns. Like you are who you are, like whatever. But at that time, I was like, I am just trying to minimize myself to be able to fit in this room, which is another conversation anyway.
Yes. I think it's funny that you're like, you could never eat anything off the bone, because that used to be what I was known for, which there are layers to that I just don't even want to get into. But like my brothers used to make fun of me if I started dating somebody. They would say, have they seen you eat chicken wings yet? Or have they seen you eat a pork chop yet?
Ew, are you one of those gross eaters that it's like...
I clean the bone. The very first time my sister-in-law, my little brother Andrew's wife Miranda, not met me, but saw me eat a pork chop. And I didn't look up from my plate until I was about halfway done. And I look up because I realized the table has gone silent. Andrew is silently cackling in the corner, and Miranda's face, the look of like fascinated disgust on her face was hilarious. I cleaned the bone. There's no meat left behind. That used to be how I did it.
It's like how I say that there are two types of people in the world: the people that let the emails ride in their inbox and the people that like to clear them out. There are two types of people in the world: the people that like clean the bone and the people that can't even have the bone on their plate. Like disgusting. Blech.
But I can't do it anymore. Anyway, so I have never given any thought to veganism, really, because I am a Midwesterner. I have been a meat and potatoes gal for the majority of my life.
Wait, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So are you implying that because you are a Midwesterner, like the meat and potatoes thing, but since I'm from California, it's like the acai bowls and the fucking vegetarian?
100%. I am 100% implying that. Your blood is where your blood is from. Okay. So like I am.
I got it. It's fine.
I mean,
it's fine.
You know how it is. Meat and potatoes just bulking us up to prepare for a long winter. That's just how we've been. So, I've only
explains why I'm always cold.
You know, I keep telling you, but I only started leaning more vegetarian in like the past year of my life. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't because of anything moral. It was more because I could feel my body shifting, and meat was becoming less of a draw. Like I would cook meat and then I would look at it and I'd be grossed out. And I was like, this is new. But like, I love animals, and I've been doing my best to purchase ethically raised meat for a while. But look, sis is broke. Okay?
Good girl.
Sometimes you got to get in where you fit in. So when it comes to veganism, I am not the best candidate. Nope. I love eggs. I eat eggs almost too much, and I'm getting to the age where I need to start keeping an eye on my cholesterol. So like, I should probably stop, but I love them. And I'm also never giving up bacon. So don't ask me to. I do try to have vegan leaning moments lately, and it does actually make me feel better when I do. So I'm curious, Brie, what is your experience with veganism?
I am so close to being a vegan. It's not even funny. So I've never been one to drink milk anyway. Like when I was
Same.
younger, they thought I had cystic fibrosis. I had like such a really weird reaction to milk.
Interesting.
So I never ever grew up drinking milk ever.
Mm-hmm.
I hate eggs.
You hate
I
eggs.
hate them.
You hate eggs.
Oh my gosh. And the thing that makes me so angry is that I love brunch. And everywhere that has brunch, it's like eggs on everything.
Yeah,
and I'm like, yo, can
eggs.
I just get like a vegetable hash? Like with some toast? I will be so happy.
Ooh,
But no,
and some
everything
tofu.
has look,
Tofu veggie hash.
I have like a bomb veggie hash recipe. Maybe I'll put it on our website. Anyway, so I never really ate. Truthfully, the only thing that really prevents me from being able to claim vegan is I like honey, but I like honey in my tea, and I like honey on my oatmeal sometimes. So I don't really ever. It's not that I'm like base meals around honey, but it's just that I incorporate it, so I could never really fall off from that. But
well, honey is so good for you. It's so delicious.
Yeah, it is, and
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I'm very Did you see my thoughts literally leave my brain, because I'm like watching them running off into the distance and I'm like, no, come back, I need you. So vegetarianism, something that's really frustrating about being a part of the vegetarian community is like the anti-vegetarian people. They're the kind of people that are like so quick to defend the thing that they don't know anything about, which is like crazy to me, because when the tables are turned and it's an issue that it's something that's important to them and it's applicable to them, but like, whatever. The number one thing that people would attack me about when I told them that I was a vegetarian was like, where do I get my protein? And it was like, everybody had like a protein problem. And I was like, you guys, like, you must really think that I haven't educated myself about this, which, like, to be fair, there was a time in my life where I was a vegetarian and I had not educated myself on it. But the thing that used to really frustrate me was that when people would come up to me and like we would have this full-on conversation, and like, I'm not kidding you, Emily, people would like actually attack me about this, and they would like get into these like arguments with me over my choice to be a vegetarian, and they would just question me on where I got my protein. And the thing is, I never ever met somebody who like decided to square up to me in these conversations that actually knew how much protein you're supposed to get. No one,
of course.
And it made me so frustrated, because like, I actually did know that information, because it only took one time for somebody to attack me about that I was like, okay, well, let me just go read up on this and make sure that I'm doing it. And like, that's no shade to anybody that decides to be a vegetarian just because, but it's a weird flex to come up to somebody and challenge their belief system and then tell them that they're doing it wrong with literally no research or informed information to back up their opinion. A lot of the times people would come up to me and they would want to know why I'm a vegetarian.
So, okay, why are you a vegetarian?
Because I want to be.
Period. And that's really all that it needs to be. Like, it's no one else's business.
Yeah, honestly, because I want to be. And so usually when people would come up to me, like, and we would get into this whole like vegetarian like drama conversation, they would boil it down. Like, they would deduce the reasons. They'd be like, so are you a vegetarian for your health or for like ethical reasons? Meaning like the people that care about animals being killed. But they failed to introduce reasons like religion or societal. And I feel like we need to talk about those reasons today, because they get overlooked and they're actually really important. Veganism isn't a single issue thing. It's actually pretty intersectional. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we need to unpack.
So let's talk about the history of veganism in the world, a brief history. So veganism as a term was coined in 1944 by Donald Watson to identify an offshoot of vegetarians who did not eat eggs or dairy or consume any animal byproducts. He wanted to make perfectly sure that everyone knew that they did not engage in such formidable acts, which I think is really laid the groundwork for modern day Western vegans.
Also, it's extremely bougie. Like, okay.
It's extremely bougie, and one of the issues I always had with vegans growing up, or veganism growing up. He also founded the Vegan Society in that same year, 1944. So Donald Watson, a white man, was a socially acceptable face for this new age movement. So now let's talk about where veganism actually came from. As I'm Big So What mentioned, there are religions and cultures that have been practicing forms of veganism for centuries, like followers of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism, which they did mention.
Cruelty-free eating is also a strong thread in Rastafarianism, where followers who reject unhealthy manners of living engage in a way of eating known as ital. I think that's how you pronounce it, stemming from the word vital. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's idle. I don't know. I apologize in advance. The diet, so their diet encouraged plant-based, unprocessed meals, which was developed in the 1930s in Jamaica, and is believed to have evolved from Hindu traditions brought over with indentured Indian servants. The Black Hebrew Israelite community, which was established in the late 19th century, also adheres to a strict vegan diet, believing it to be the secret to eternal life, which is probably why my skin looks the way it does. Just kidding. We also saw vegetarian and vegan practices in the African American communities before being brought over to the U.S. The foodways of slaves were not heavily dependent upon animal products, and neither was the food that they ate in the American South, which was mostly plant-based.
Accurate.
But during the Great Migration, where many Blacks moved from the South to the North and the West, they moved to these big cities with no outdoor space, so that took a lot of the plant-based culture. It was too expensive to buy vegetables all of a sudden because they couldn't grow them themselves. And in many ways, poverty forced them to find different food sources, which is something we will circle back to in a minute.
In a minute. So now, not all practitioners of these belief systems are vegan or even vegetarian, but they were among some of the older spiritual practices that promoted respect for animals and the earth. Sometimes that involved veganism, though it was not called that yet, vegetarianism, or still eating meat, but not eating in excess or wasting the animal, which many indigenous communities practice this and still do to this day. So most people like to point to the Greeks, as always, for some reason, as the first, we'll say, big name to give voice to the concept of vegetarianism. Pythagoras, along with being a mathematical genius and being someone who actually respected the intelligence of women, was a big advocate for a meatless diet. Up until
the guy with the Pythagorean theorem?
Yes, the Pythagoras.
That's the Pythagoras? Okay.
Yes, that Pythagoras, which I always have a hard time saying. Up until the Vegetarian Society was founded in 1847 in England, the vegetarian lifestyle was called the Pythagorean diet. Now, I'm making up the pronunciation of that word because who says that? I don't. So I apologize if I'm saying it wrong.
Could it be like the Pythagorean diet? The Pythagorean.
It could be. You could
diet.
You could pick the. You could pick the emphasis that you want, however you want to say it. It was based off of his name. Okay. So knowing all of this history is good. And as far as I could tell, is actually pretty widely discussed by people who are already so involved within these communities that they are even aware that there is a vegetarian or vegan society, because I didn't know those existed.
Yeah.
But as I'm Big So What,
I'm so sorry. It's honestly, it just sounds like a really pretentious club. It just sounds like a very pretentious club.
I'm part of the vegan society.
Yeah, which is like everything that we're dissecting in this. Like, the reason that it sounds like a little prestigious, gross club is for every reason that we're about to like
unveil. And discuss.
Words are not my thing today, but like, anyway, I digress.
Words aren't my thing most of the time. But as I'm Big So What points out, the average person, specifically Americans and Westerners, have no clue that veganism was just splattered with white faces and the holier-than-thou veganism movement began to emerge. Even as I was researching this and looking up lists of top vegan cookbooks and bloggers, majority of the faces I saw were white or white passing. Even on Instagram, when I looked up #vegan, when I wasn't drooling over delicious-looking videos of vegan dishes, the faces that I saw were mostly white women. And my algorithm is pretty exclusively POC accounts. And the reason that is because veganism has been dominated by wealthy white women.
Girl, when I tell you I was a vegetarian for at least 5 years before I had ever tasted Indian food,
Oof.
which is predominantly vegetarian, it's literally because the vegan slash vegetarian lifestyle has been whitewashed.
Yeah, it's wild. So I had personally always associated veganism with like health crazes and then the larger movements that it goes along with. So I would lump veganism in with like, I don't know, the keto diet now or paleo diet, just very specific rules around eating based off of a couple of health studies with nothing to really support it. That's how I used to view veganism.
Sure, I can see that. I can see
right.
that.
Because that's how it had always been presented to me until recently. We are a product of the 80s and we are children of the 90s. Veganism went hand in hand with the animal rights movement. So there were just a lot of very angry people picketing and screaming at people for eating meat. And everyone that I came in contact with that was openly vegan was incredibly pretentious.
Yeah.
Until recently. So like the new age of veganism is just simply called a plant-based diet now, which I personally feel is starting to get back to its roots in the cultures that have been practicing it for centuries. Now, I'm Big So What talks about the cultural appropriation of foods and white vegans trying to change them to be quote unquote vegan friendly when there is no reason for changes to be made, or calling a dish an appropriated name without any understanding of where the dish or the name comes from.
Girl.
The most widely marketed example that I could think of is the Buddha bowl.
Buff.
A Buddha bowl is essentially a vegetarian or vegan meal served in a bowl, or sometimes a high-rimmed plate. A cross between a bowl and a plate. A blate, if you will. That consists of small portions of a healthy and balanced diet, like whole grains, veggies, and non-meat proteins. Some would say that the Buddha bowl name comes from the round belly shape of the bowl, which I am like, really? That's where you're going to go with that?
No. No, girl. When have you named anything like that? Like, so a bowl of spaghetti, you're naming it after the bowl of their stomach when you eat when the spaghetti hits? Like, I don't know.
It's also different. Like, a lot of people like to confuse Buddha and the round. There's complications in there and misconstruing of history, which I am really probably going to talk about sometime in the future. Anyway, others would say it comes from the story of Buddha carrying his food bowl to fill it with whatever bits of vegetarian food people would offer him. The fact that there is any discrepancy at all, and that most places selling Buddha bowls are not owned and run by Buddhists, tells me that we probably shouldn't be calling it that. In fact, I found an article on bonappetit.com that actually interviewed Doyle Garanga, so sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, who is a monk and a chef at the Bhakti Center in New York City. And not only had he never had a Buddha bowl, he had never even heard of one before. He told the reporter that Buddha was just, and I quote, another spiritual word that is taken way out of context.
Bloop.
He also talks about yoga going through the same corporatization, which I would love to do an episode on the cultural appropriation of yoga, but that is for a different day.
Girl.
And Buddha bowls aren't the only foods that are appropriated by rich white vegans. As an article from Vice.com stated, these white vegans have been making money off of their African peanut stew or Asian stir-fry recipes, while the vegans of these cultures, who have been around longer than the white gatekeepers of the vegan community, watch their traditional recipes get taken and appropriated and profited from. And more often than not, very incorrectly, and way less delicious than the actual traditional recipes.
Like white women put in like apples and guacamole. Stop.
Don't be rude.
Stop.
That is disrespectful.
Come on.
Period. They also push for their readers to buy these expensive ingredients from their favorite local high-end grocery store, which presents another set of problems.
Okay, let me speak on it. There is this brand on social media that I 100% bought into. It's called The Sakara Life. It's a plant-based food delivery service run by two white women out of New York. heavily plugged as like a life-changing way of life. Is that how I want to say that? Life-altering change of life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I bought into it. I, like most, am a sucker for clean, vibrant, Instagrammable photos with captions like, "This really works." So I went to their website, instantly mesmerized, but it's like, so if you go into like their website and you go like under like the food delivery thing, you go all the way through the checkout and stuff, girl, for 2 meals a week, $169 for
For
2
the week or
deliveries
for the month?
for that week.
Oh my God.
Girl, that lifestyle wasn't for me.
Nope.
Um,
Nope.
but because I still wanted to be a part of like this culture, I bought their detox plan and their cookbook. Jesus Christ. And their I cannot today. I bought their cookbook. Which I have in my home right now. And if I open up to any page in that book, it's full of ingredients that even Whole Foods doesn't have all the time. Yeah.
Yikes.
So the cleanse that I bought, they sent me this super Instagrammable detox box with like a pamphlet of recipes to make in order to do the cleanse properly. And girl, when I tell you that
Cute.
1 week's worth of my groceries almost cost me $200, and I'm making meals for myself
Absolutely
because
not.
David doesn't do that vegetarian thing. I was like buying ingredients like that I didn't have like casually in my cupboards, like rice vinegar or like taro root or agar-agar. And many of them are still in my cupboards today because I can't stomach the fact that I spent so much money to use literal tablespoons worth of these ingredients. And I don't know what else to do with them, which is like something that we need to do when we're talking about like the layers of how problematic this is. One, let's start with the name. They've acknowledged that it's a Sanskrit name, which belongs to a religion that they don't practice. I don't really know if they practice it, but like everything that I've seen on IG doesn't say anything about like, here's how you incorporate this practice with our name.
I would guess they probably don't practice.
Which is like a problem. That's a problem. Yeah. 2, if I hadn't purchased the cookbook, I wouldn't say that I learned anything about it. Right. So my thing is like, if you're going to pitch me like it's a lifestyle change, then I need to learn some things so that I can keep it a part of my lifestyle. And sidebar, that was one thing that I'm actually really proud of when I chose to be a vegetarian for like the second time, which like there was a period in my early 20s when I was a vegetarian, but I would get really drunk and I would go home and like get a Big Mac on my way home or something like that. And I would pretend that I didn't.
Oh, you don't say. I was in the car for many of those times trying to force you to not take a bite of our burgers. What?
But anyway,
I'm trying to support you.
So my second round of vegetarianism, I was like really smart about it. And I went to the library and I actually like checked out books and this was also triggered by the people that were like, how do you get your protein? But I read about eating my vegetables and getting my proteins because I didn't want to be like a cheese eating or a cheese pizza eating vegetarian. Like there's other things than just eating like cheese pastas and stuff. Plus I don't really like cheese that much. And I truthfully, I wanted to nourish my body, which is one of the things that like, I should have mentioned this when we were talking about like vegetarianism and how you were like, how does it feel? But we can get into it later. And that was like a huge thing that was missing with their program, the educational part. And then finally, the biggest thing for me, to imply the importance of this huge life-altering lifestyle change and make it completely unattainable is almost unforgivable to me. We have the right to be able to live. We all have the right to live. And we all I just can't. I fucking can't.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
We all have the right to live the best possible lifestyle that we can. Like every single one of us, that is our right as humans, right?
Yeah.
And to make these recipes with ingredients that are unaffordable and inaccessible implies that only people with a certain class and financial status can reap those benefits. And the thing that super sucks is that I felt great. I felt really great after I did this detox.
That sucks.
But I always feel really great when I'm putting more vegetables in my body and being mindful about the things that I eat. But the way that I learned that was from white women on social media, not at school, and certainly not from the people whose culture created these now heavily social media influenced lifestyles. It's problematic.
It is very problematic. But veganism in and of itself is a beautiful dietary lifestyle and can be super beneficial to a lot of people. Like when I cut out meat and most animal products, when I do that, I feel like I have more energy. And I notice that I'm not as inflamed as I usually am.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
As someone who has sustained multiple injuries in her life, fighting inflammation has been a lifelong journey for me. And cutting out meat has actually really helped me with that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Brie, when was the last time you ate meat on the regular?
I got back to my vegetarian ways on the 4th of July, 2018.
Was the 4th, okay, was it the beginning of the day, 4th of July, 2018, that you were like, I'm not doing this? Or was it after you had consumed meat and you were like, I can't do it anymore?
100% no.
Like, oh God.
It was the beginning of the day because I was like, I actually hate hot dogs and I don't know who I'm trying to kid right now.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, not to beat a dead horse here. I didn't like meat on the bone. I don't like hot dogs. I don't really mess with cheese like that. And I wanted to do it again because at that time, and I like full disclosure, I just realized this, Emily, I just realized this the other day. The Trump years and the Trump administration years, I gained like 20 pounds. Girl,
same.
And like, is half of that due to me being under constant stress?
Yes, it is.
Yes. 2, and also like being in a new relationship and all of that blah blah blah. But also like I started eating meat again, and because I was eating meat again and I was being like, oh, I can have these nachos and I can have these hamburgers and I can eat all of this kind of crap that was just like really not good for me. And like the mindfulness, right? Yes. And the mindfulness that I had worked really, really hard to incorporate in with my eating just completely went out the window.
I have a separate question that goes with that. What are like the biggest physical benefits that you get from devoting yourself to the vegetarian lifestyle?
Girl, at the height of it, and I am not exaggerating when I tell you this, there would be days that I would wake up and I would say, I feel like I need to eat carrots today because like my B12 is down. Like I was so in sync that I was like,
wow.
I knew what my body was craving. So there would be days that I would be like, ooh, I could really use like this vegetable, or I really need like citrus right now. It was insane. And like, I don't know if this is just the way that my body is built, but I'm not really injury prone. So like when you guys talk about like
I mean, I'm thankful because it sucks, but
like, yeah, when y'all have talked about like your injuries or like how you feel achy in your joints and stuff, like I don't know her. And that's also me saying that as somebody that like physically I run every day, but I don't feel anything in my knees or in my joints or anything like that. Like, so I don't know if it's just like my lifestyle and my diet, but yeah, I would say that I just feel something that I remember reading, and this might have been on a PETA website. I don't know. It was some kind of propaganda, but something that I remember reading that stuck with me in my choice to being a vegetarian was the idea that like it takes your body so much more time and energy to digest meat, that it's like the equivalent of like having like a dead carcass that's just kind of like sitting in your stomach. That sounds very PETA.
Really
that sounds very PETA.
That's a very PETA.
Yeah.
And I'm also gagging a little bit.
Yeah. But really, and I was like, and so for me, I was like, I want something in my body that I know is immediately going to the cells and to the things that it needs to. So like, if this is breaking down into me, then I know that like this vitamin C is going here, this is going here, this is going here. And that's not to say that like meat doesn't have like some proteins that like it's really hard to get from plants, but I feel like people write that off really quickly and they don't think about all of the other vitamins and minerals that they're not getting because they're simply like one track mind on meat. Yeah. And protein.
Yes. I was sitting here thinking, we can decide if we want to actually put this on the podcast, but I also think it's really important to make this a normal topic of discussion. But I have like chronic BV, which is bacterial vaginosis. So if I like put on underwear that's too old, or if someone looks at me funny, or if I keep a tampon in too long or whatever. If I have a new sexual partner, I get BV right away. it's quick and it's immediate. And I can't tell you how many times I go to the doctor and I'm like, it's BV. And they're like, well, let's check on it. I'm like, no, it's BV. And they come back and they're like, you know your body really well. And I was like, I've been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah.
Cutting out meat has helped my pH balance. So I don't deal with that nearly as much as I did.
Girl.
As when I ate meat. I think it's really important to talk about that, because that's one of those things where it's like BV isn't an STD, and there's so many what's what I'm looking for. There's so much stigma surrounding that, but what BV can do is it can cause odors, and it's basically the same sorts of signs that you get with STDs, and so no one really talks about having it, and it sucks to have it frequently, and it is obviously curable because it's just a bacterial infection or a bacterial imbalance. Anyway, so I wanted to bring that up because I think that's super important. Okay, see, this is great.
No, girl, but see, here's the thing. One last thing to just like throw out there. I think there is a difference when we're talking about limiting meat in your diet versus adding more vegetables and fruits.
Yep.
Right? Because I was a vegetarian for a really long time that was limiting meats and then just kind of like picking up what else was there. But there is a difference when you start adding in the more vegetables and the diversity in your microbiome, which I did a complete course on in the beginning of quarantine. So if you have questions about your microbiome, at me. But having the diversity in your microbiome is really, really important, because then your body can start fighting off and adapting to more things. It's kind of like when you get sick, right? And like if you're somebody that gets sick really often, a lot of it has to do with your immune system not being able to fight off all of the things because you've kept yourself in like this bubble. Microbiome is going to be very similar, where if you are not putting diversity into your food groups, you are not going to be able to enrich your body with the nutrients that it needs. Yeah, you might feel more deficient in this area, or you might not have what you need over here because you're not getting it. Anyway, I digress.
And see, this conversation is great. So this works for us, but there are many people out there who cannot commit to these lifestyles for their own personal health. So I personally know quite a few people who have dedicated themselves to these lifestyles for years and realized that some of the rules needed to be broken for them to survive. Like one of them even went to school to be, I think she went to school to be a dietitian. So she knew what she needed to eat in order to keep all the essential nutrients in her body, but it still didn't cut it. She needed to eat a burger every once in a while. She just made sure that they were happy, free range cows. Okay, so I would like to talk about the difference between what I call happy animals versus the sad animals. That's just what I say because I'm weird like that.
I've never heard that before. Yeah, I don't know what
Keep in mind, as we were talking about this, that this is all new to me. I'm sharing with you the things I have discovered, not the things I know. I have also never successfully even kept a plant alive, let alone been a farmer of any kind. So this is like not judgment. This is just information.
Okay.
So happy animals are actually humanely raised animals, and humanely raised would include animals that are pasture raised, grass fed, raised indoors with enrichments, raised without antibiotics, processed, aka slaughtered humanely, a combination of any of these or all of the above.
So like kosher.
These practices lead to healthier and happier animals. So let's think about this. Stress affects human bodies in a variety of negative ways, like high blood pressure, heart disease, disease in general, obesity, and diabetes, among a slew of other health issues. So the same thing happens to all living things under stress. It affects them physically.
Yes.
It causes the systems in the body to react in a fight or flight response. When living things are constantly in that mode, it causes physical issues. And we consume those issues.
This is really meta. I'm here for it though.
It's super meta. So enter sad animals or unethically raised animals. To avoid deep diving on this topic, it's exactly what it sounds like. inhumane slaughterhouses, animals kept in cages. There's a lot to it. And this episode isn't about trying to convince you to change your eating habits. So I'm going to let y'all do your own research on that because my heart can't handle it right now.
No, literally.
I can't handle it.
So sad.
I can't do it. We have, hopefully, all at least heard of the insane working conditions of meatpacking plants during the Industrial Revolution. If you were forced to read The Jungle in your English lit class in high school, even if you are like me and you blocked out most of it because it was a bit traumatizing, you still know a bit about it.
I don't know what that is. Can you just give me like a super short Cliff Notes version?
Literally all I can tell you is that it's about the meatpacking plants in Chicago.
Oh, no.
During the Industrial Revolution and the working conditions of the poor and working class of work. That, I mean, it is
not listening. Blah, 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 blah. Not, nope.
It's rough. It's rough. Okay. So you know about the conditions that were so harsh because the company owners were about that money and all about doing things fast and cheap. So you can imagine that in the past, I don't know, half a century or so, trying to go back to the ways of healthier and happier animals through ethical practices costs more money. Therefore, the meat costs more money.
Sidebar, can I just shout out the fact that it makes me so angry the way that we process foods in this country because what is it? A third of what the world produces for food doesn't get consumed, which means that we 100% have an ethical and moral obligation to take a step back on how we're producing things because a lot of that stuff doesn't get eaten. So why would you waste the time and money to produce it that way if it's not even
It's so frustrating. It's so incredibly frustrating. And where do you think that most of the fancy, ethically raised meat that is more expensive is going to go? Higher end grocery stores. And where are higher end grocery stores? In white suburbs or gentrified inner city areas. You know what else they get? Fresh produce. They get fresh produce. Which brings us to my favorite point of the post created by I'm Big So What. The shaming of non-vegans by the vegan community who not only have appropriated culturally traditional foods, but also ignore the reality of food deserts in a lot of those same communities.
Yes.
Food deserts are areas in which residents are hard-pressed to find affordable, healthy food. And they disproportionately affect communities of color. Who's surprised? Not I.
Not I.
Now, I don't know how many people listening have ever lived in a food desert. I have been lucky and privileged enough to not know that particular struggle.
Right.
But if you were to drive to an area that would be considered a food desert, you would most likely find the following: convenience stores, fast food chains, gas stations, maybe one grocery store. What you will not find is usually more than one grocery store, a co-op, a farmer's market, or even a supermarket. So what this means is it is easier and more convenient to grab a bag of White Castle than to go to the grocery store and find a variety of products ranging from SpaghettiOs to organic produce.
100%. It's kind of like how in the suburbs you'll find a Starbucks on every corner. It's it's like in a food desert you're going to find a McDonald's, a Taco Bell, all of that on
a McDonald's, Taco Bell, a Wendy's,
all of it. And why is it so inexpensive to get fast food for cheap? Because it doesn't make sense to me that I can go to McDonald's and get a decent sized Sprite for under $1, but a bottle of water is $2. Well, let's look at staffing, buying power, ergonomics, automation. Basically, the cost of production is cheaper, which still doesn't make sense to me and is extremely problematic.
And I think it's important to note this very interesting yet not at all surprising fact that I found. Yes, poverty plays a big role in food deserts. And that, unfortunately, goes hand in hand with race a lot of the time. A researcher by the name of Kelly Bauer compared neighborhoods with similar poverty rates, and these neighborhoods were comprised of different racial groups, and found that neighborhoods that were predominantly Black or Hispanic were more likely to suffer from lack of supermarkets and access to quality food. She also noticed in her time working with women in Baltimore who were recovering from substance abuse, how many Black women were at risk of cardiovascular disease.
Yep. I'd also like to insert that Black people are generally more susceptible to diabetes, lactose intolerance, and heart disease, which are all illnesses that have direct links to food consumption. Just saying.
And and what Kelly Bauer noticed is that even if these women wanted to make healthier choices, Their neighborhoods were full of convenience stores that sold junk food. There weren't any public parks or gyms, and many of them had to rely on public transportation. When I tell you that carrying groceries only a couple of blocks from the closest grocery store to my apartment in Brooklyn was enough to make me order out way more than I should have. Mm-hmm. Imagine having to carry groceries on public transportation, especially if you have a family and are working full time. No one has time for that.
It's going to be a no for me, dog.
It's wild. I mean, we were lucky that we hopped on the J and only had to go one train station into Manhattan to be able to find the closest Trader Joe's, but that was still hopping on the J and going.
It's too far. That's too far, especially knowing that on the way there was probably 3 McDonald's.
So much. Right on that little block there's so much junk food. So why are we talking about this? Accessibility and accountability. The white vegan movement has stolen from these communities of color while actively ignoring the needs of these communities.
Right. Whether it be intentional or unintentional, it's still stolen.
It's still stolen. And it sounds like a broken record narrative because it is. It's the same issue in nearly every other industry, health, craze, or practice, like across the board. So how can we help? After the uprising in Minneapolis, following the murder of George Floyd by the Minneapolis Police Department, we were both inspired by the way the communities came together. Most people lost their grocery stores, their modes of transportation, or their feeling of safety. And watching people outside of the affected communities go to the stores in their own communities and bring food to the food deserts was amazing and inspiring. But the grocery stores aren't going to come back overnight. They're still struggling. There are many ways that we can help right these wrongs. For example, we can actively search for vegan and vegetarian bloggers that are part of marginalized communities. I bet you'll be surprised at how long these bloggers and chefs have been at it without any sort of following outside of their own communities. We need to hold white vegan bloggers accountable for their verbiage, ask them to state their sources for their recipes, make them give history lessons, and to highlight bloggers that are actually a part of the appropriated community. Also, donate. Find local food shelves, community outreach programs, or better yet, find the organizers of mutual aid groups and programs who are directly connected to those who are in need. Don't just go to your store and donate the cheap non-perishables. I mean, that's great. But also try to find a way to bring fresher and healthier food to those who need it. It can be tricky because many places won't accept food if it isn't non-perishable. I know, which is why I suggest finding the grassroots organizations that are donating directly to the communities and are doing immediate turnover. If we want to save the world, we have to start with our own communities.
Yeah, we are going to find some sources and link those on our blog. And I will also post some vegan and vegetarian recipes for anyone who is interested in giving it a try. Even if you don't choose to live a meatless lifestyle, what we put in our bodies is just as important as what we're putting into our minds. A lot of us have been in this quarantine pandemic shutdown working on self-care, but completely ignoring what we're putting into our bodies, which is equally important. I'm talking about you guys, wine night. Mm-hmm. Yep. And by you guys, I mean me, but also you guys, because how many of y'all have been sitting there drinking wine and ordering DoorDash? Mm-hmm. Anyway, when we eat better, then we can be better. And when we are better for ourselves, we can do better for others. And that is a privilege that we should all recognize and do something with. So, Emmy, what did you learn today?
What did I learn today?
Yeah.
I learned a lot on today's episode. Doing research for this was very eye-opening, but also none of it was surprising.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
It's just sort of like, this is just yet another thing that we have been fed through the lens of whiteness that it just isn't accurate. It just isn't accurate. It's just pulling back that white curtain.
What a day.
What a day. What a day.
On that note, I'm excited for next week. Do we know what we're doing next week?
No, girl, we don't know what we're doing next week.
Well, then I guess we'll just see you next week.